Story time about how my boyfriend got myself and another girl pregnant at the same time. So a little background information, I was 18 and a senior in high school whenever this all happened. And I've been dating my boyfriend, who we're going to call Ivan, since I was 15 years old. And he was truly my first love, and everything was going great until our senior year. Ivan started acting super weird out of nowhere, ignoring my calls and going out way more than usual without me. And then one day, another girl answers his phone whenever I called. And when I confronted him about it, he said that it was his sister playing a prank. And I ignored these red flags, of course, because what are we? Colorblind. Anyway, soon after this, I realized that I'm pregnant, and Ivan was thrilled about this. Well, fast forward a little bit after I find out that I'm pregnant, he casually admits to me one day that he did it on purpose because he was afraid that I would leave him whenever I went off to college. Fast forward, things got worse when I found out that he had got another girl pregnant, but she was 7 months along. Not only that, but his mom thought that we had been broken up. So I end things with him. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend got myself and another girl pregnant at the same time. So like I said, he admitted that he got me pregnant so that way I wouldn't leave him whenever I went to college. So I broke up with him, and while I'm dealing with my pregnancy, I lost one of my closest friends, and then I lost my baby 6.5 months in. But despite all of this, I finished high school and got into college and started volunteering at a hospital. And y'all will not believe this shit. The one day, I run into Ivan at the hospital that his girlfriend is giving labor in. And he has the nerve to sit there and apologize and say that he wanted our family back. And that's whenever I told him, sir, our baby's gone. Like, I lost that shit. So then later, he called me and he asked if I was pregnant again. But I just blocked him and his whole family after they kept trying to guilt trip me into getting back with him, even though he literally had a baby with another girl. Fast forward, over a decade later, I've graduated, I have a great job, a house, and I'm engaged to the love of my life, and we're planning to start a family, and I've healed through a lot of therapy. Ivan's married and has kids, but he's still living this drama-filled life. Story time about how I crashed my dad's really expensive car. So a little background information. My mom had just got remarried to my stepdad 3 years ago, and he was this rich asshole who owned a bunch of food trucks and thought he was the shit. Well, at the time I also had a boyfriend, and we had only been dating for like a month and a half. Well, my boyfriend would always beg me to let him drive my stepdad's car, and I always said no because that was like his child. Like, he had children. He could care less about them. His car was more important. Anyway, so the one weekend my parents are out of town, and one of my friends was throwing a graduation party. So that whole day my boyfriend was trying to talk me into taking the car, and I already knew where my stepdad hid the keys. So I just decided I wouldn't drink that night and I would just take the car. He kept asking me if he could drive, but clearly I said no, because this kid literally told me that he crashed the first 2 cars that he had. So we get to the party, we're having a good time, and one of my friends tells me that everybody's taking pictures with my car outside. Like for part 2.
Found my husband naked with his mom, and then she punched me. Disclaimers are not my story time. Send me on Instagram. My mother-in-law is the most toxic, violent woman I've ever met. And she hates me because I married her perfect little boy. Everything started 5 years ago. My husband and I met on Hinge. Neither of us was looking for a serious relationship, but we ended up falling in love. We started going out on dates, and every time we would go on a date, we would end up just spending a week together. Eventually, I got my dream job and I moved to New York City. I was working in fashion and making 6 figures a year. As you can imagine, my life was amazing. He asked me to be his girlfriend, and we decided to do long distance. It was totally fine for the first couple of months. He was the one that decided to drive 5 hours to come see me. 2 months later, out of nowhere, he decided to propose. But the thing is, I wasn't sure if I should say yes. We hadn't been together long, and he was already offering to move to New York City with me. My life was so good in New York, I didn't know if I wanted him to come be with me. When I said I wasn't sure, his mother called me to convince me to marry him. Part 2 is story time about how I found my husband naked with his mom, and then she punched me. Disclaimers are not my story time. Was sending me on Instagram. My mother-in-law calls me to convince me to marry her son. And guess what? She managed to convince me, so I said yes. He ended up moving to my apartment in New York City 2 weeks later. And that's when my personal nightmare began. My mother-in-law started coming over to our apartment every single weekend to plan the wedding. But all she cared about planning was my husband's stuff. For example, she only wanted to go try on his suits. We didn't even talk about my wedding dress. Then this woman had the audacity to plan the whole menu around his favorite foods. One day she comes up to me and says, "This is the menu for the wedding," without even asking me. No, I was not about to have corn dogs on the menu. Since we had a spare bedroom in our apartment, she started to sleep over. And she would tell my husband to sleep with her because apparently she was scared at night. At this point, she's planning the wedding. My husband is sleeping with her, and my family is paying for it. Part 3 is my husband naked with his mom, and then she punched me. Disclaimers are not my story time. Send me on Instagram. After she took over planning our wedding, we finally got married. I was so busy with work that at that point, I just didn't care. For the next few years, she started coming over to our apartment at least once a month, and she would sleep over. And sometimes my husband husband would sleep with her. I told my husband that it was kind of weird that they slept together, and he told me that it wasn't, that they were just really close. One night I'm sleeping and I hear noises coming from the guest bedroom. I know that they're sleeping in there, so I walk over and open the door. That's when I see them fully naked, and my husband had his arm around her shoulder. Then she runs over to me and starts punching me. And then my husband tells me to get out. Then he gave me some bullshit excuse about how they're recreating childbirth. I kicked her out of the apartment, and my husband got mad at me. I no longer have a relationship with her, and I'm thinking about leaving my husband. She still comes to our apartment and just flat out ignores me. What should I do?
Am I an asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just to keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost 5 years. Granted, we did break up throughout those 5 years. With all the breakups, we've actually been together for about 3 years. I've never considered myself an obsessive person, but when it comes to him, something just takes over me. Here's some of the reasons why we broke up. At first, he didn't want to be in a relationship even though I begged him, which I know was so dumb of me. So he eventually broke up with me and told me that he didn't want anything serious. But he kept on calling me every single week because he wanted the dirty. Instead, I started going out on other dates and I would flaunt it all over my social media. And this worked. It made him super jealous and he came right back to me. Called me up one day and told me that he wanted me back. The second time we broke up, I caught him talking to some girls on Facebook. When I confronted him, he broke up with me. Told me I was too nosy and that he needed to live his life as a single man. We finally got back together. I told him that it was for marriage. He said yes, that he would eventually ask me to marry him. A few months ago, he started acting really cold towards me. He would barely call me, and when we were together, he would never touch me. That's when I started digging in his phone and I found that he was talking to some girls on Instagram. But I knew that if I confronted him, I would risk him breaking up with me again. So I did the next logical thing. I waited until I saw him again and I told him that I was pregnant. I even started to cry to make him feel like I was happy. His face turned completely white and he asked me if I was sure. I said, yes, aren't you happy, baby? Part 2 is up. Am I the asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just so that I could keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. That's when he started to cry. Remember, I don't even have a pregnancy test to show or anything, but surprisingly, he didn't ask for proof of my pregnancy. He just kept crying on the couch. I asked him if he was happy, but clearly he was not. But he lied and said, yeah, of course I'm happy. Seeing how vulnerable he was, I took advantage of the situation and I brought up marriage. I told him we should get engaged soon so that we could tell his family. Then he said, are you sure you want to get married? And I said, of course, we're gonna have a baby. Then he sat there for a minute and thought about it. Finally, he got down on one knee and said, do you want to marry me? I said, yes! And this time I cried for real. All my dreams were coming true. After that, things started moving really fast. We invited both our families to my apartment and we hosted a dinner. We broke the news to them that I was pregnant. Again, nobody asked for proof of the pregnancy though. Our families were so happy and excited. That very same night, he gave me a beautiful engagement ring. His mom even started planning the baby shower. Let me remind you, I'm actually not pregnant. So I had to come up with a plan. You'll never guess what I did. Part 3 is up. Am I an asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just to keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent me on Instagram. His mom started planning the baby shower and there was no turning back. Even my mom got involved in the planning of the baby shower. So like I said, I'm really not pregnant at this point. So I started trying to get pregnant, but my damn boyfriend just wouldn't touch me. I decided to check his phone again and saw that he was still talking to some girls on Instagram. So I decided to confront him at this point. I mean, we are engaged and I'm supposedly pregnant with his baby. I confronted him and he just got angry at me. He said that if he was gonna marry me and have a baby with me, he would need to talk to other girls and that was not a negotiation for him. Then he confessed that he was seeing 2 other girls on the side and that there was no way he was gonna stop seeing them and that I couldn't do anything about it. But his confession actually made me fall out of love with him. Now I'm planning to break up with him. But what do I do about the fake pregnancy? I do want to make him pay for what he said to me, but I don't want to hurt our families either. Should I just come clean? What should I do?
My father-in-law is forcing my husband to break up with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. This is a 3-part story time and I'm doing a full face of pink makeup today. My husband and I have been married for 2 years. Now, we did get married very, very young. By very young, I mean I was 18 and he was 19. When we started dating in high school, his dad was totally against the relationship. See, my husband was super popular. He played on the football team. All the girls chased him. He also played basketball and was perfect at everything he did. As you can imagine, was extremely strict with him. He was not even allowed to go out on weekends. Me, on the other hand, my parents are pretty much hippies. They let me do whatever I want. We're all very spiritual. My parents have full trust in me. Because of this, I make smart decisions. I actively seek my parents' advice. I even told my parents I lost my virginity when I did. And we had a big conversation about it. It was not dramatic. It was not like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. They just support me in everything I do. Now, my husband's parents are not the same. They tell him not to do a lot of things. They try to control him. So as we were dating in high school, his dad kept telling him to break up with me. He claimed that I was holding him back and that because of me, he spent less time training. Which technically, yes, is true. But at the same time, you cannot stop your son from experiencing human relationships. In fact, he actually broke up with me for 2 weeks. But then we got back together in secret. Everything culminated when he asked me to marry him right after graduation. His parents were absolutely against it. But my parents were all for it. You guessed it, go to part 2.
Story time about the worst day of my life. So a little background information. I was 16 at the time, and I was either in 8th grade or 9th grade, but I really don't remember. And I had this boyfriend who we are going to call Cameron. We had been dating for 3 years, but before him and I got together, we were best friends. Well, I also was in a friend group with myself, Amber, and this girl named Sky. Now, I wouldn't really call Sky a pick-me girl. She was more of a jealous best friend. For example, the one day we went shopping for dresses, and I picked this one out that I really liked and that looked super good on me. Amber was like, OMG, you look so beautiful. And then Sky, she was like, that dress is ugly and it makes you look fat. Well, after that, I told her I didn't care what she said and that I was going to get the dress anyways. Well, she didn't like the fact that I wasn't going to listen to her, so she didn't talk to me for 2 whole weeks. And then after, she texted me saying that she forgives me, even though I didn't apologize, but okay. Well then, me being stupid, I introduced her to my boyfriend. Bad idea, like for part 2. Story time about how I was almost kidnapped. So a little background information, I was 13, and it was the summer going into 9th grade. I was on a road trip with my family, and we needed to stop for some gas. So we stopped at some random gas station, and we see this lady get out of her car and walk in. No big deal though. So we're inside, and we're waiting in line to use the bathroom. So we were in the front of the line, and then that lady was behind us, and then there were a few people behind her. So as we're standing in line, she FaceTimes some guy, and then she starts pointing the camera at people around the store, and she would be like, oh, do you like this? And he would say yes or no. Well, then she points the phone at me, and then he goes, yeah, that's the one. And my mom and I were super creeped out about this, because she was being super loud, and she was taking a really long time at this gas station. So my mom goes into the bathroom, and then she starts to talk to me. She starts asking how old I am, where I'm from, and if my mom and I were here with anybody else. Like for part 2 about my shitty ex-boyfriend. So like I said, the original plan was for us to go together to his house after school. But I was like, I'm going to be spending the whole week over there. I should probably pack some clothes and get a shower. So after school, he drove me to my house. And he said that his parents wanted to have dinner together, so he had to go back to his house. And he would pick me up later. So when I got to my house, I got ready and everything, blah, blah, blah. And by this time, it was like 8 o'clock. Well, I kept texting and calling him, asking him where he's at, if he's coming to get me still. Then I realized that none of my text messages were going through. So then I go to text him on Snap. And what do you know? I couldn't find him on there. And then I call him off my mom's phone. He answers the phone and hangs up right away. Well, we were supposed to have a little party at his house too, that all of my friends were going to. So I texted every single one of them. None of them answered the phone. And I remembered that my one friend had shared her location with me before. So I went and looked at her location and where was she at? My boyfriend's house. So while I sat at home crying that whole week, he was throwing parties and cheating on me with my friends. And when we went back to school, he acted like we were never in a relationship. Story time about my shitty ass ex-boyfriend. So a little background information. My ex and I have been dating for about 2 years. And throughout those 2 years, he was a dick. He would cheat on me, talk to other girls more than me, but of course I pretended that everything was perfect in my relationship. I would brag to all these people about how my relationship was so good, blah, 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 and everything else. Because it's embarrassing whenever bitches can talk shit because your relationship is very toxic. Like, listen to this bullshit. The whole 2 years we were dating, I had over 10 girls DM me on Instagram saying that they screwed my boyfriend at his house. I never confronted him about it. I was just one of those girls that cared way too much about what everybody else thought. Okay, now fast forward. And it was a Friday at school, and Thanksgiving break was the following day. And him and I have this whole plan to spend the whole break together, because literally a week before that, he was on vacation in North Carolina for 2 whole weeks. Well, instead of going with him after school, I decided to go home, get an overnight bag like for part 2. Part 2 about how I crashed my dad's very expensive car. So like I said, everybody's taking pictures of the car, but I decided to let it go at first. I mean, there was one point where I went outside just so that way I could kind of let everybody know, hey, you're taking pictures with my car. Well, half an hour later, my boyfriend and I decided to leave, and he's obliterated. Like, we probably got 50 feet from her house, and then I had to stop the car so that way he could get out and throw up. in somebody's yard. Anyway, so he gets in the car, we're on the way back to my house. And my house was like a 20-minute drive away. Well, we were 5 minutes from my house. At this one intersection, I get a green light and I go to make a right, and I accidentally hit a car turning out of the bar parking lot. So I'm literally freaking the fuck out. And my boyfriend's in the seat next to me crying for some reason. So the guy in the other car calls the cops. The cops show up, they call my stepdad and my mom. My boyfriend went to the hospital, he had alcohol poisoning. Well, my boyfriend told his mom that it was all my fault and I'm grounded for 6 months.
My father-in-law wants my husband to break up with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, send me on Instagram. This is a 3-part story time and I'm doing a full face of pink makeup. When he asked me to marry him right out of high school, his parents absolutely freaked. They went to my parents' house and told me off for saying yes. In other words, they were completely blaming me for the whole thing, as if their own son didn't go buy a ring and ask me to marry him. Even did a beautiful proposal, which he had been planning for months. But at this point, his parents didn't even know that we were boyfriend and girlfriend. When they came to my house, his mom, my now mother-in-law, started crying and yelling at me. She told me that I was ruining their family, that I was trying to steal her son, and that all I really cared about was their money. By the way, my parents were middle class, but we were not destitute. His parents are very rich. They own several businesses. But of course, I'm not after their money. That's when they said that if we did end up getting married, I would have to sign a prenup. Duh, I said, yeah, I want to marry him because I'm in love. At this point, his parents knew they couldn't stop us. We were going to get married with or without their approval. But thankfully, his parents came around and let us get married. We had a quaint, small wedding. It was so magical. But his parents wanted him to go to college to play football. In other words, they wanted him to be the next Tom Brady. They made him train for hours. And they didn't even let us live together for the first year we were married. And because they were supporting him, he couldn't say no. They had us on a schedule. Could only see him for about 2 to 3 hours a day. And we were married. 2 years later, he's playing for a football team. But his parents keep thinking that I'm dragging him down. So now they're trying to convince him to leave me. Go to part 3. My father-in-law is trying to convince my husband to divorce me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, and this is the final part of the 3-part story time. I'm doing a full face of pink makeup. After a year of us being married, his parents did not allow us to live together because he needed to focus on football. So obviously, I was living with my parents. I was focusing on my own studies, but his parents did allow us to see each other 2 to 3 hours a day. Now, you might think my husband is a total pushover, but let me explain something. His parents paid for all of his training and his entire college tuition. They gave him the best of everything. He got sports massages every single day. They even installed a cold plunge in their backyard. They also had a full gym setup where he and his teammates would go work out every single day in their house. Obviously, he did not have time for little old me. After a year of this, I couldn't take anymore. I wanted to be with my husband. So I gave him an ultimatum. That he tell his parents that he and I wanted to live together. That's all I wanted. I was even willing to pay for half of the rent. And he told his parents, they said fine. And they bought us a house. Obviously under my husband's name, not mine. Fast forward another year up until now. I've heard his dad tell him on several occasions that he needs to divorce me. That he could find a much prettier wife once he becomes bigger in the NFL. And I walked in on his mom telling him that maybe I can't even have kids. And that he should have me checked. My parents-in-law hate me. I sometimes feel like I am holding him back. They make us miserable. My parents think I should just walk away from the marriage, but I'm too in love. Should I confront my parents-in-law? Help me think of what I should say to them.
Part 2 about how my best friend cheated on his girlfriend with me. So like I said, the one night I was at his house and he was on my phone and he was asking me who all these guys were on my Snapchat. And I told him that I had been talking to them and he was just being super toxic. He was talking shit on every single one of them. So eventually I started dating this guy Trey, and after that he texted me saying that I was gross and everything else, when the next day he literally got a girlfriend. But weirdly enough, he didn't block me that time. He actually started texting me more, saying how him and his girlfriend were so happy together, da-da-da-da-da. And unlike him, I would be supportive. Well, the one night at 2 a.m. he came over my house and he was like, I don't have feelings for my girlfriend. And I'm like, okay, then why are you with her? And then he has the nerve to say, don't you get that I like you? Like, really? Well, eventually we cut off all communication and he was still with this girl. Well, the one night he asked me to come over and talk, and we ended up doing the nasty. And then he blocked me on everything after he said we should both leave our girlfriends and boyfriends. Well, I ended up telling his girlfriend what we did, and they also come to my family cookouts. Part 3 about how my ex-boyfriend accused me of cheating on him on an all-girls trip. So like I said, I received over 100 messages from him. He got a picture of me dancing with one of the boys and said, we're done. And then at 1 a.m, he's like, I miss you so much. Please don't leave me. Like, I've been doing so bad while you were gone. So of course I didn't accept his apology and I just blocked him on all my social media. And the next day I wake up to messages on my Instagram, my Snapchat, my Facebook. Like, who even uses that? Unless you're talking to family. Well, then Carson decides to tell everybody at my school about how I'm a lying, cheating scumbag. And now, 3 years later, no good guy from my school wants to date me. So now whenever I'm talking to a guy, I have to make sure that they're not affiliated with Carson in any way. But low-key, I had a really good glow-up, so all the hot boys want to talk to me now. And Carson's pretty much still a scumbag. Part 2 about how my ex-boyfriend accused me of cheating on him on an all-girls trip. So like I said, I started distancing myself from him because he became too attached and was just way too toxic. Well, I was also in a lot of clubs in school, and a few of them would require me to go on trips. Well, the one that I went on was an all-girls trip, and before I left, I texted Carson letting him know that I wouldn't have my phone all week. Well, on the last night of my trip, there was a girls and boys dance. There was like a group of boys from a different school that we were meeting up with, and I tried staying back at the cabin, but they wouldn't let me. So we started doing dances that required partners, so I was pretty much forced to dance with one of the boys. Well, when I came back home, I got 100 texts from Carson calling me a bunch of nasty names, and you can probably guess them. And somebody got a picture of me dancing with one of the boys, and Carson sent it to me and said, "We're done." So after that, I just ignored him. And then literally that night at 1 a.m., he was texting me saying, "I miss you, please come back to me, like for part 3.
Imagine you end up falling in love with a gay man. Started out as a situationship that lasted 5 years. You were the aggressor and the chaser. When you met, he told you he wasn't ready for a relationship, but you knew that you could just change his mind if he gave you a chance. After months of you guys hanging out, he finally caved in with some liquid courage. You thought this was going to be it. Thought he'd want a relationship and that he would fall in love with you. The first couple of months, it was fun. Thing is, he's really charming. He's got great style. He loves to cook. He's a really good host. Every Thursday, you guys would have a movie night. He would make you the most amazing food. But after a few months, he started losing interest, and you became desperate. The more he would let go, the more you would push him into a corner and ask him if he wanted something more serious. And every time he said no, you would argue for 3 hours. This went on for 4 years, on and off, because he would block you, because you were overbearing, controlling. You always wanted to be with him. After 6 months of radio silence, like magic, he calls you and asks you if you're still interested in him. Are you giving him a chance? Of course you are, because you're obsessed. Babe, part 2 is up. What would you do if you ended up falling in love with a gay man? You've now been in the situationship for 4 years with him. After he's done blocking you for months, he calls you and asks you if you still want to be in a relationship. And you don't even hesitate, you just say yes. But it wasn't the same as before. He's always busy with work. He can't really spend too much time with you. After 6 months of you constantly chasing this boyfriend, you ask him why he wanted to get back together with you if he's not even willing to spend the time. This is when he tells you that he had a really bad experience with somebody, but he doesn't tell you who. That he's just really sick of dating people. He's ready to settle down, and he promises to make more time for you. But actually, nothing changes. He's distant, but not cold. And when you do see each other, you guys have fun. When you're not with each other, he doesn't even remember to text you, never calls you. You're the one that has to make all the plans. One day, he shows up to your apartment crying and scared. You asked him what happened. He told you a man followed him home. And this is when you find out he's been in love with this other man for years. That explains his behavior. He's begging you for help. Are you gonna help him? Part 3 is up. What would you do if you fell in love with a gay man? He comes to your apartment crying and scared. He confesses to you that he's in love with a man who is stalking him, and that's basically why he wanted to get into a relationship with you. He explains that he's been gay his entire life, and that he's been hurt so many times by men, and all he wants to do is to be able to fall in love with you. You finally understand why he's been so distant, and why he's never said I love you, why he avoids spending time with you. He ends up asking you for help. He proposes a lavender marriage, that you get married, that you take care of each other, and that you are just life companions. And that's it. All your hopes and dreams of a relationship with this man have been destroyed. But because you're so in love with him, and you see how hurt he is, you want to say yes. But are you really willing to marry a gay man for his own comfort? There are plenty of other men out there for you, but he is technically your best friend, and he gives you the best advice. Will you accept, or will you try to find another man? Let me know what you think in the comments. Bye. I caught my roommate's boyfriend taking pictures of me while I napped in my room. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. 6 months ago, I had to kick out my lying, cheating boyfriend. Not only was I the one paying for all of the bills and the rent, he had been talking to multiple girls on Instagram at once. When he moved out, I realized my life would be a lot easier if I just got a roommate. Somebody to just share the expenses with. Through word of mouth, I landed on my now roommate. And she seemed perfect on paper. She was a nurse working at a hospital. She was my age. She was very health conscious, loved to cook, and at first seemed like the type of person that I could trust and rely on. on. The day she moved in, she asked me if her boyfriend could sleep over. Told her that night he could, but that I would prefer to have my own space without any man. Explained to her the situation that I had just had with my boyfriend. She said that she respected it. When I met her boyfriend, he seemed really considerate, very charming, and helped out around the apartment a lot, especially with moving her things in and cleaning up after them. I thought I had landed in roommate heaven. But one day I'm napping and I thought I was alone in my own apartment. When I wake up, I see his hand holding his phone through my door. This man was taking pictures. Part 2 is up. Caught my boyfriend's roommate taking pictures of me while I slept in my bedroom. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. When I wake up from my nap, all I see is a man's hand and his phone pointed at me through my door. I immediately get up from my bed, go outside, and realize he had left the apartment and left the door open. And I knew it was him. I called my roommate immediately. I told her what happened. Luckily, she had just gotten to our apartment and was on her way up. I was so angry at the fact that I'm sleeping in my own apartment, and now I have to be scared that there's a man lurking. Once she walks into the apartment, he was in defense mode, that nobody was in our apartment. Once again, I told her exactly what happened and that the door was left open. She said no, that he would never do that. Then she told me that he was probably not even in town anyway. I asked her to call him on speaker and his phone was turned off. He came over that night. They're both gaslighting me into believing that I was probably just dreaming, that he would never do that. When I asked to look at his phone, she slammed her bedroom door and left me there by myself with him. Obviously, he would have deleted the pictures by then. Of course, I asked her to move out. She continues to say that I was dreaming and that nothing happened. How in the world am I ever going to prove this actually happened? What should I do?
Storytime about why I will never let my sister pet sit for me ever again. So a little background information. I was 18 and it was the summer before my freshman year in college. And it was towards the end of the summer, so I decided that I wanted to take a vacation with a few of my girlfriends before we all went off to the different colleges that we were going to. And I have a lot of pets. I have 4 hamsters, 2 snakes, a tarantula, 2 birds, and 1 fish. So I asked her if she could watch all of them. She said yeah, so I wrote her out a schedule of when they need to be fed. And I wasn't even going to be gone a week, so it would be pretty easy because I already cleaned all their tanks and everything like that. And I wasn't worried at all because I trusted my sister. She had 2 dogs and a cat, so I thought she was going to be fine. I called her the first 2 days. Everything seemed to be going well. And I called her on the 4th day and she didn't answer the phone. So I called my mom, asked her if she could get a hold of her. And my mom said that she spent the 2 days at her boyfriend's house, like for part 2. Part 2 about why I will never let my sister pet sit for me ever again. So like I said, I called my mom asking if she could get a hold of her, and she said that she spent the last 2 days at her boyfriend's house. And the worst part was, my sister was the only one with a key to my apartment. So my sister calls me the next day and she's like, hey, sorry, like I was at my boyfriend's house. And I was like, who fed the animals? And she was like, well, I just put enough in their cages so that way they would be fine for like 3 days. And she was like, don't worry, I'll sleep over there tonight to make sure they're okay. So I'm like having a fucking panic attack right now. Anyways, so fast forward, I get home early in the morning and my sister's sleeping on the couch, but my sister brought over her animals too. So I wake my sister up and I'm like, hey, like, how are all the animals? She's like, oh, they're fine. And then we walk into the kitchen and the fucking bird cage is open. And my birds are missing. And her cats are nowhere to be found. So now I'm freaking the fuck out. So then I go to check on the rest of my animals, like for part 3. Part 3 about why I will never let my sister pet sit for me ever again. So like I said, we walk into the kitchen and the bird cage is open and my birds are nowhere to be found and neither is her cat. So at that point, I run to check on all of my other animals. Thankfully, the snakes were fine, so I go to check on my tarantula and he's missing. So now I grabbed my sister's dogs, locked them in my room, and I went to go check on my hamsters. Yeah, she forgot to feed them the whole week because one of them ate the other one. So at this point, I'm having like a mental fucking breakdown and I'm moving all the furniture in the living room and everything like that. And we lift up the couch and we see her cat bolt out from under the couch. After that, I look under the couch and my bird is literally torn into pieces under the fucking couch. A few days later, she texted me and she was like, hey, like, I feel so bad. Like, let me buy you a new bird and a new tarantula. And to this day, 2 years later, I still don't know what happened to them.
Story time about how my parents forced me to marry my first cousin. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. In 1962, I was 22 years old. I was studying biology at my university. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life. In fact, I had planned out every single year of my life. During this time, it was very uncommon for women my age to even study, to own businesses, or the expectation that I could be single until I was 30. But I expressed to my parents many times that I did not want to get married. Now, that's not to say I didn't want family or children, but I really wanted to focus on my career. Fortunately, both my parents thought that I was crazy for even wanting to study, let alone waiting to get married. Now, I think the one that really suffered from this idea was my mother. She would come into my room at least once a day with tears in her eyes to tell me that she thought I needed to get married to have kids. Because without kids, I would have nobody to take care of me in the future. 2 months later, my parents let me know that they have arranged a marriage for me. Now, did I fall into a deep depression? No, actually. I was actually open and excited until they told me that it was my first cousin. The cousin that I grew up with and was almost like a brother. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my parents forced me to marry my first cousin. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. When they told me who I was going to marry, I was beyond sick to my stomach. I had grown up with this cousin. He was like a brother to me. For the next 8 hours, I groveled, I begged, and I kept promising my parents I would do anything to meet any other man, literally marry anyone else but my first cousin. They said that it was too late. Months later, there I am, dressed in white, marrying my first cousin. But the biggest twist of all is what happened after that. We were married for 2 weeks before I realized how sick this was. I couldn't touch the man, and thank God he couldn't touch me either. We knew that it was totally wrong, but of course, during that time, you just did what your parents wanted you to do. Divorce was really quick. I went back to school. I got married about 10 years later. Yes, everybody thought I was an old maid, too old to marry, no man will want me, but my husband and I had 4 kids. We're still married. Because of the Vietnam War, I actually became a nurse. I retired in my 50s. Now I live on a beach with my husband. You are never too old to follow your dreams. So start now.
Story time about my toxic ex-best friend. So a little background information. I had a very close guy friend who we're going to call Max. Now, Max was 2 years older than me, but due to our families being super close, him and I became best friends. Growing up, I saw him as kind of an older brother. And then eventually, as we grew up, I saw him as my best friend. Until I realized that he was actually a terrible person. And I missed all of the signs that he was not a real friend. Like 1, our first fight, I told him something that I didn't want anybody else knowing. And what do you know, right after I tell him, my family knows, his family knows, my crush knows, all of our friends know. After this, I probably should have distanced myself, but he apologized and we became friends again. That was sign number 1. Sign number 2, his huge change in attitude. 1 second, he would be extremely rude to me, and then he would be this really sweet and caring guy, and his apologies were the best. So it was really hard not to forgive him. He was like a master manipulator. Number 3, we only talked whenever it was convenient for him. Like seriously, we would never talk unless he needed something, like for part 2. Part 2 about my toxic ex-best friend. I think we left off on sign number 3, which was the only time that we would talk was when it was convenient for him. He would never reach out, which left me being the one who was constantly trying to preserve our friendship or whatever was left of it. Like all of our messages were literally me, and it made me seem really needy and like I was putting in way too much effort because he would literally answer with the most simple messages. Like, yeah, okay. Sure. And he would only talk to me whenever he wasn't with his friends. Sign number 4. It felt like he was embarrassed of me. Now, I know that I was 2 years younger than him, but we were still friends, and I really don't think that's that much of a difference. Like, he would never want to be seen with me. The last sign, he would literally always talk about me behind my back. And I thought this was just rumors at first, until finally several people told me that it was not a rumor. He would say things like, oh, she's ugly, she's so immature, she's annoying and childish, she's so annoying. And then I finally decided to cut him off. Because if the bad outweighed the good, was it really worth keeping that person in my life?
Am I an asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just to keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost 5 years. Granted, we did break up throughout those 5 years. With all the breakups, we've actually been together for about 3 years. I've never considered myself an obsessive person, but when it comes to him, something just takes over me. Here's some of the reasons why we broke up. At first, he didn't want to be in a relationship, even though I begged him, which I know was so dumb of me. So he eventually broke up with me and told me that he didn't want anything serious. But he kept on calling me every single week because he wanted the dirty. Instead, I started going out on other dates and I would flaunt it all over my social media. And this worked. It made him super jealous and he came right back to me. Called me up one day and told me that he wanted me back. The second time we broke up, I caught him talking to some girls on Facebook. When I confronted him, he broke up with me. Told me I was too nosy and that he needed to live his life as a single man. We finally got back together. I told him that it was for marriage. He said yes, that he would eventually ask me to marry him. A few months ago, he started acting really cold towards me. He would barely call me, and when we were together, he would never touch me. That's when I started digging in his phone and I found that he was talking to some girls on Instagram. But I knew that if I confronted him, I would risk him breaking up with me again. So I did the next logical thing. I waited until I saw him again and I told him that I was pregnant. I even started to cry to make him feel like I was happy. His face turned completely white and he asked me if I was sure. I said yes. Aren't you happy, baby? Part 2 is up. Am I the asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just so that I could keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. That's when he started to cry. Remember, I don't even have a pregnancy test to show or anything, but surprisingly, he didn't ask for proof of my pregnancy. He just kept crying on the couch. I asked him if he was happy, but clearly he was not. But he lied and said, yeah, of course I'm happy. Seeing how vulnerable he was, I took advantage of the situation and I brought up marriage. I told him we should get engaged soon so that we could tell his family. Then he said, are you sure you want to get married? And I said, of course, we're gonna have a baby. Then he sat there for a minute and thought about it. Finally, he got down on one knee and said, do you want to marry me? I said yes, and this time I cried for real. All my dreams were coming true. After that, things started moving really fast. We invited both our families to my apartment and we hosted a dinner. We broke the news to them that I was pregnant. Again, nobody asked for proof of the pregnancy though. Our families were so happy and excited. That very same night, he gave me a beautiful engagement ring. His mom even started planning the baby shower. Let me remind you, I'm actually not pregnant, so I had to come up with a plan. You'll never guess what I did. Part 3 is up. Am I an asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just to keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent me on Instagram. His mom started planning the baby shower and there was no turning back. Even my mom got involved in the planning of the baby shower. So like I said, I'm really not pregnant at this point. So I started trying to get pregnant, but my damn boyfriend just wouldn't touch me. I decided to check his phone again and saw that he was still talking to some girls on Instagram. So I decided to confront him at this point. I mean, we are engaged and I'm supposedly pregnant with his baby. I confronted him and he just got angry at me. He said that if he was gonna marry me and have a baby with me, he would need to talk to other girls and that was not a negotiation for him. Then he confessed that he was seeing 2 other girls on the side and that there was no way he was gonna stop seeing them and that I couldn't do anything about it. But his confession actually made me fall out of love with him. Now I'm planning to break up with him. But what do I do about the fake pregnancy? I do want to make him pay for what he said to me, but I don't want to hurt our families either. Should I just come clean? What should I do?
My father-in-law is forcing my husband to break up with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. This is a 3-part story time and I'm doing a full face of pink makeup today. My husband and I have been married for 2 years. Now, we did get married very, very young. By very young, I mean I was 18 and he was 19. When we started dating in high school, his dad was totally against the relationship. See, my husband was super popular. He played on the football team. All the girls chased him. He also played basketball and was perfect at everything he did. As you can imagine, was extremely strict with him. He was not even allowed to go out on weekends. Me, on the other hand, my parents are pretty much hippies. They let me do whatever I want. We're all very spiritual. My parents have full trust in me. Because of this, I make smart decisions. I actively seek my parents' advice. I even told my parents I lost my virginity when I did. And we had a big conversation about it. It was not dramatic. It was not like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. They just support me in everything I do. Now, my husband's parents are not the same. They tell him not to do a lot of things. They try to control him. So as we were dating in high school, his dad kept telling him to break up with me. He claimed that I was holding him back and that because of me, he spent less time training, which technically, yes, is true. But at the same time, you cannot stop your son from experiencing human relationships. In fact, he actually broke up with me for 2 weeks, but then we got back together in secret. Everything culminated when he asked me to marry him right after graduation. His parents were absolutely against it, but my parents were all for it. You guessed it, go to part 2. My father-in-law wants my husband to break up with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. This is a 3-part story time and I'm doing a full face of pink makeup. When he asked me to marry him right out of high school, his parents absolutely freaked. They went to my parents' house and told me off for saying yes. In other words, they were completely blaming me for the whole thing, as if their own son didn't go buy a ring and ask me to marry him. He even did a beautiful proposal, which he had been planning for months. But at this point, his parents didn't even know that we were boyfriend and girlfriend. When they came to my house, his mom, my now mother-in-law, started crying and yelling at me. She told me that I was ruining their family, that I was trying to steal her son, and that all I really cared about was their money. By the way, my parents were middle class, but we were not destitute. His parents are very rich. They own several businesses. But of course, I'm not after their money. That's when they said that if we did end up getting married, I would have to sign a prenup. And duh, I said, yeah, I want to marry him because I'm in love. At this point, his parents knew they couldn't stop us. We were going to get married with or without their approval. But thankfully, his parents came around and let us get married. We had a quaint, small wedding. It was so magical. But his parents wanted him to go to college to play football. In other words, they wanted him to be the next Tom Brady. They made him train for hours, and they didn't even let us live together for the first year we were married. And because they were supporting him, he couldn't say no. They had us on a schedule. Could only see him for about 2 to 3 hours a day. And we were married. 2 years later, he's playing for a football team. But his parents keep thinking that I'm dragging him down. So now they're trying to convince him to leave me. Go to part 3. My father-in-law is trying to convince my husband to divorce me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, and this is the final part of the 3-part story time. I'm doing a full face of pink makeup. After a year of us being married, his parents did not allow us to live together because he needed to focus on football. So obviously, I was living with my parents. I was focusing on my own studies, but his parents did allow us to see each other 2 to 3 hours a day. Now, you might think my husband is a total pushover, but let me explain something. His parents paid for all of his training and his entire college tuition. They gave him the best of everything. He got sports massages every single day. They even installed a cold plunge in their backyard. They also had a full gym setup where he and his teammates would go work out every single day in their house. Obviously, he did not have time for little old me. After a year of this, I couldn't take anymore. I wanted to be with my husband. So I gave him an ultimatum. Daddy tell his parents that he and I wanted to live together. That's all I wanted. I was even willing to pay for half of the rent. And he told his parents, they said fine. And they bought us a house. Obviously under my husband's name, not mine. Fast forward another year up until now. I've heard his dad tell him on several occasions that he needs to divorce me. That he could find a much prettier wife once he becomes bigger in the NFL. And I walked in on his mom telling him that maybe I can't even have kids. And that he should have me checked. My parents-in-law hate me. I sometimes feel like I am holding him back. They make us miserable. My parents think I should just walk away from the marriage, but I'm too in love. Should I confront my parents-in-law? Help me think of what I should say to them.
Story time. My boyfriend cheated on me with the girl best friend. So a little background information, I was 17 and a junior in high school, and my boyfriend and I had been dating for a year. But just a little backstory about when we got together. So there were definitely some red flags that I missed, okay? One of them being that he had a girl best friend. And I don't care what y'all have to say if that makes me insecure or what, but coming from someone who has been the girl best friend, I knew this was not good at all. Especially whenever we first started dating and she was still being super friendly with him, meaning she would hold his hand, she would hang on him 24/7. And when I told him I was super uncomfortable with that and I felt like there needed to be some boundaries, he was like, yeah, I told you what it was whenever we got together. So if you don't like that, then just break up with me. Looking back on it now, that was also a red flag because I feel like he was telling me to break up with him so that way he didn't have to break up with me, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with the girl best friend. So like I said, she would still hang all over him and he pretty much told me, if you don't like that, then you can leave. Obviously, I did not want to leave because I liked him and he was my boyfriend. So I just kept putting up with it, and eventually, we got 6 months into our relationship. So at that point, I'm thinking maybe I have a little bit more authority, to be like, hey, I don't like the way that she acts around you. You guys can't hang out like that anymore. And they would hang out alone together. He would take her to dinner, which I literally tried telling him that the stuff that they do together is relationship stuff. And he was like, that's not true at all because we did all of this stuff before you and I even got together. So anyways, like I said, 6 months in, I'm like, hey, I don't like the way that you guys are hanging around each other. Once again, he gives me the same excuse. So he pretty much said that he didn't care. And the one night him and I were supposed to hang out, but he canceled on me last minute. And her and I didn't get along and she never Snapchatted me before, but then I get a Snapchat of her and him making out at his house.
My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimer, not my story time. Send me on Instagram. My husband and I have a really toxic relationship. When he and I first started dating, I was extremely jealous. I would instigate fights almost every single day. Now that we're married, I'm definitely less jealous. But he's always been jealous throughout our relationship. He tries to control everything I do, down to the way I dress and even the people I can or cannot hang out with. He even insisted that I quit my job, which I did. He's invested a lot in Tesla and crypto, so he makes a lot of money without having to leave the house, which yes, is totally amazing. But that means he and I are together all the time. And with his jealousy, sometimes I just can't stand him. I've tried to help him with his jealousy because I used to be in that place. And when I try to talk to him about it, he just gets mad at me. Whenever he sees that I post something on Instagram, he gets angry. He says that I'm looking for attention, which of course I am, but not from guys. Everyone posts on social media because they want to show off their life. A little on my sister. We're identical twins, and we're really, really close. Unfortunately, my sister got laid off from her job last year. That's when she decided to start her OnlyFriends. I support her in everything she wants to do. She's actually making really good money from it, so she's really happy about it. A few days ago, I got on my husband's phone to look for something. When I see my sister's pictures, part 2 is up. My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. A few days ago, I got on my husband's phone to transfer some money from his account to mine. When I started looking for his banking app, I noticed something else on his screen. I had never seen this before, so I clicked on it. And as soon as I opened it, I see my sister's pictures. And I knew it was her OnlyFriends right away. By the way, I had never told my husband that my sister had an OnlyFriends. She wouldn't even post about it on her social media. So the fact that he found it makes me believe that he had my phone bugged bugged or something. But here's the thing. He was using a different name for his account, so it was likely that my sister did not know it was him. From there, I could see that he was following a bunch of other girls. And when I went to their messages, he had paid over hundreds of dollars every single day to all of these girls. Can you imagine how much money that is? My husband came into the room and saw me on his phone. Of course, he didn't freak out because he never thought that I would find it. But I confronted him right away. But he didn't even flinch. He said he had every right to go on OnlyFans because it was the same thing as going to any website. I told him to at least unfollow my sister, and he said that he wouldn't. He said he loved it because it was like watching me do naughty things. Then he said, "Isn't this better than cheating on you?" I was flabbergasted. Part 3 is up. My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimers is not my story time. It's gonna be on Instagram. That's when he told me that it was better than him cheating on me. And I was shocked. I couldn't think of anything else to say, so I threatened him. I told him that if he didn't stop following my sister, that I would start my own OnlyFriends account. Like I said, he's really jealous. So he went berserk. He ripped my phone out of my hand and threw it against the wall. Then he told me that the only reason he asked me to quit my job was so that I wouldn't be around other men. By the way, I used to be a personal trainer, and most of the time I would only train women. I told him that my sister and I wouldn't be comfortable with him looking at our OnlyFriends. It was so disturbing. Oh, and I also told him that he needed to stop controlling me, and that I could buy my own phone with my own money and start my own account. Then he came to his senses and started to apologize. And I also told him that I was suspecting that he bugged my phone and that he was receiving my messages because there was no other way he could have found out about my sister's account. Then he calmed down and explained things to me. He said that he had bugged my phone a few months ago because I was posting too much on Instagram and it was bothering him. So basically, he has access to my DMs and all my text messages. Promised to stop doing that and that he would buy me a new phone. And that's how he found out about my sister's OnlyFriends. He said he only signed up out of curiosity and that he only wanted to see a few pictures and then delete it. But the more he kept looking at her pictures, the more he would think of me and that it turned him on. And in front of me, he deactivated his account and deleted everything. He promised me that he would never do that again. Of course, I haven't forgiven him though. Haven't even spoken to him in days. But every time he sees me, he tries to kiss me and hug me. And when I push him away, he tries even harder. Honestly, I think he likes it. I do believe that he's secretly addicted to drama and that he thrives on it. I'm planning on never telling my sister about it. I don't think she'd feel comfortable around him ever again. I mean, I don't feel comfortable around him right now. I'm so confused and I don't know if I should leave him or not. He's so controlling all the time. What should I do?
Story time about how my boyfriend was dating me and some other girl at the same time. So a little background information. I was 16 years old and a junior in high school. And we're going to call my boyfriend Tyler. So Tyler and I met back in middle school, but we were like barely even friends. Well, fast forward to my junior year in high school. He reached out to me and eventually him and I were talking every single day. So fast forward 3 months, him and I were definitely more than a friendship because we were doing everything that couples would do just without the label. Well, the one day him and I are hanging out and we're taking pictures on his Snapchat and sending them to his friends. And then I see that his number one best friend is this girl named Bailey. Now, the reason why I wasn't on his best friends list was because I didn't have Snapchat. But the only reason why this is a problem is because him and his friends Snapchat each other all day. And I'm talking like spam the fuck out of each other. So for her to be at the top of his best friends list, they have to be Snapchatting a lot. So I had asked him if it was this one girl that we both knew, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend was dating some other girl and myself at the same time. So like I said, he's clearly been Snapchatting this girl a lot. So then I asked him if it's this Bailey girl that we actually knew, and he was like, no, this is Bailey Moore. That other Bailey is disgusting. Like, okay, what the fuck is so special about this one? Just kidding, not really. So now I'm super annoyed and cannot get this girl out of my head because he didn't even try to explain who she was or why she had any significance in his life at all. So fast forward to spring break. He told me that whenever we got back from vacation, he wanted me to meet his parents, which I was so happy about because our relationship is finally progressing. But then I remembered that he's supposed to go to his hometown's prom with some other girl, of course. So I decided to look up this Bailey girl just to see where she's from, and what do you know, she's from his hometown. So fast forward, I ended up getting in trouble for going out and getting drunk, and my parents took my phone away, and then they went through it, and they found out that Tyler and I were doing the nasty, so they grounded me. And they were like, you can tell Tyler that he can text or call us if he wants to talk to you. I didn't get any text the whole entire time that I was grounded. So fast forward a whole week, I finally text him, like for part 3. Story time about how my boyfriend cheated on me with his best friend's sister. So a little background information, I was 15 and in 9th grade, and we're gonna call my boyfriend Alex. Alex and I had been together for 6 months, and at the beginning of our relationship, his best friend, who we're gonna call Caleb, him and I literally despised each other. But Alex would always want all 3 of us to hang out, so we decided that we had to get along. So we decided to keep it civil only when we were with Alex. Well, fast forward, all of a sudden, Caleb's grown-ass sister starts hanging out with Caleb and Alex 24/7. And it was weird because she was like a senior hanging out with a freshman. But I didn't think anything of it at first. Well, then, out of nowhere, while I was at school, like a week later, Alex says that him and I need to have a talk. So we start walking away from Caleb, and as we're walking away, Caleb looks at me and gives me like this good luck look. Then he told me that he wanted us to take a break. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with his best friend's sister. So like I said, he tells me that we need to talk and then he goes, I think we should take a break. Like, what do you mean take a break? Well, funny thing, throughout this whole break, he was still being touchy with me, still acting like we were in a whole ass relationship. And the whole time I was acting like I was fine, so that way I didn't want him to feel bad for me and felt like he had to get back together with me. And he was acting like nothing happened. Like I said, it was getting to the point where all my friends had started asking if him and I were back together. And I had to be like, no, we're not back together yet. Well, then Friday rolls around, aka 2 weeks later, and he tells me that he misses me. Shocker. So then he said he wanted to get back together. I said yes, obviously, because I still really liked him and I was a dumbass not to see the red flags. Well, now that it was second time around of us being together, I started to notice the first flags that I didn't notice in the beginning of our relationship. Like the one time he went to the mall with his friends and he gave these girls his Snapchat. He wasn't going to tell me about it, but then his friends told me, like for part 3. Story time about how my best friend was obsessed with me. And I'm not saying obsessed as in, oh my god, like, you know, she does her hair like me. No, I'm saying in a creepy way. So a little background information, I was 14 and it was the summer before I was going into high school. And I had this best friend who we're gonna call Madison. Now, I met Madison like a month before school ended. She was one of those kids that nobody really liked and nobody wanted to be near. But we were partnered up in this one class and she's actually really funny. So since summer just started, I invited her over to have a sleepover at my house. Everything went well, we were swimming, we watched movies, but my house was in a really wooded area, so if you had certain phone carriers, you wouldn't get any reception. So she asked if she could use my iPad to text her dad, and it was like 11 o'clock at night, so I let her use it, and then we went to sleep. Well, I woke up around 3 in the morning because my phone kept going off, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my best friend was obsessed with me in a creepy way. So like I said, I woke up at 3 in the morning because my phone kept going off and it wasn't dinging or anything. It was just the light flashing when it would go off and on. So I look around for Madison and then I see my bathroom light is on but the door is shut. So I just brush it off and I go on my phone and I see a bunch of text messages that were sent from me, but they weren't sent from me. Like, obviously, somebody had went on my iPad and started sending people messages. So I look at these messages, and it's all texting Madison. And I kid you not, it's literally pictures of me while I'm sleeping that she sent to herself. Like, there was a picture of my hair, a picture of one of my birthmarks. And then on her side of the nightstand, there was literally a lock of my hair. Like, she cut my hair off. And it was in a Ziploc bag. So at this point, I'm actually really creeped out and I go and tell my mom. And my mom talked to her mom and apparently she's done this before. Part 3 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with his best friend's sister. So like I said, I started noticing red flags. Well, when I had confronted him about the Snapchat thing, he told me that he felt bad if he didn't give it to them because he didn't want to be mean. Another red flag is that he would never, ever, 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 ever let me touch his phone. Like, if he even saw my eyes look at his phone for 0.2 seconds, he would grab it real quick. Anyways, back to him getting with Caleb's sister. When we had got back together after our break, this one girl came up to me and she was like, hey, I have to tell you something. I didn't think it was going to be anything about my relationship with Alex, but here we go. She goes, he broke up with you to hook up with some other girl. So obviously I'm fuming. I go up to him and I'm like, did you break up with me to go and hook up with another girl? He goes, that's in the past. Why are you mad about it? Like, we were broken up. Clearly he thought it was okay just to break up whenever you want to go do shit with someone else. Apparently she said that they could do stuff if we broke up, but I ended up finding out that she does this to all of her little brother's friends. Story time about how I caught my grandma with my dad. So a little background information, I was 16 and it was the first day of 11th grade. Well, my friend wanted me to come to the mall with her after school that day. She was like, screw your grandma's birthday, just come to the mall with me. So the plan was I would sneak onto my best friend's bus after school and skip my grandma's birthday. By the way, my grandma was low-key a hoe. Like, half of her kids won't even bring their husbands around her because after she got their numbers, she would end up sending nude pictures to them. Anyway, so the end of the day rolls around and I go to my locker to get my book bag. When when I'm called down to the office. So I go down to the office and my mom is there to pick me up because she said that we needed to do a few things before our grandma's party. Well, my grandma was at our house getting ready and my mom forgot her wallet at home. So when we went back home, I went to go put my book bag in the house. When I walk in and I see my grandma and dad on the couch, and I'm not even going to say what they were doing, and my mom is walking past them like she didn't see anything. So after that, I called one of my aunts and asked if I could stay with her for a while, and now I don't talk to any of them. Part 3 about how my mom got with my sister's boyfriend. So like I said, obviously we could hear stuff. We saw their clothes on the floor, so I took a video and I took a picture. But obviously you couldn't see anything. And I didn't want to tell my dad first. So my best friend and I, we went downstairs, we went to the carnival. And when my sister got back, she ended up getting back with Ben because obviously after he was done, he went back to my sister. I know this is confusing, but try to keep up. So I asked my sister if she can pretty please take me and my friend down to the pool to go swimming. So my sister came down with us and then I was like, I have to tell you something. So then I ended up showing her the photos and the videos. And at this point, she's like, what the fuck? So surprisingly, without choking this man to death, she goes upstairs, she goes to sleep, and then the next morning she goes and has a talk with my mom. So my mom, my sister, my friend, and I, we all sat down at the buffet in the morning and had breakfast. And my dad and Ben weren't there. Well, long story short, my mom ended up saying, it's not fair that you bring all these young guys around me, da-da-da-da-da. Are you really gonna break up our family because of this? And till this day, my dad still does not know about it. Story time about how my boyfriend and best friend were sneaking around behind my back. So a little background information, I was 15 and in 10th grade. So my mom and dad were split up and I was pretty much allowed to do whatever I wanted because of that. So I was dating this boy named Jacob. Well, my best friend Alice literally hated him. Like low-key, every once in a while, she would try to break him and I up. And when I would call her out on it, she would just deny it. Anyway, so the one day I didn't go to school because I was super sick. So the whole day I was trying to text Jacob and Allison, but nobody was answering me. Which was extremely weird because no matter what, Allison would always text me back. So after I knew the school ended, I went to Allison's house. Nobody was answering the door, so I used the spare key. I walk in and all I hear is a very loud banging coming from her bedroom. So I walk in, I see my boyfriend and her together, and then he starts saying that she drugged him. So I went on his phone, I see a bunch of old text messages between him and her, and them exchanging pictures. And then sis wants to start giving me an attitude, so I punched her in the face, and then I left and I don't talk to either of them. Story time about how I almost got kidnapped by my online boyfriend. So a little background information, I was 16 and in 11th grade. So a year before this all happened, I posted a picture on Instagram saying, add me on Snapchat if you want to be friends. Yes, I was that person. Anyway, so this really cute guy adds me on Snapchat, and after about 3 months talking, he said that he wants to meet me in person. And he didn't sound sus at all, so I was like, sure. So we met at this park that was like 30 minutes away. And we met there around 6 o'clock, so when the sun was setting. And he was super nice. It was super romantic. Well, then we went to his house. We watched a movie and we did the nasty. So after that, he asked me if I want a drink. And what I could have swore was 20 minutes later, I wake up in an abandoned farm shed. No clothes or anything. So I start screaming my head off. I don't have my phone or anything, so I start to run. And then he grabs me. He says, if you try to run or you try to scream, I am going to kill you. Like the part 2 about how I almost got kidnapped by my online boyfriend. So like I said, I wake up in this abandoned farm shed. I don't have no clothes. I don't have a phone. So I try to run and he grabs me. He says that if you run, I will kill you. So I was like, okay, fine. What do you want from me? So he starts putting on lingerie and tells me to also put some on so we can take pictures together. What the actual you know what? So after that, he starts crying and he starts telling me his whole life story and how he's not who I think he is. Turns out that he's 32 and he just goes online pretending that he's 17 years old. So I just try to comfort him, right? It ends up working. He brings me my clothes, tells me to run, or else he's going to, once again, kill me. So I run, I go to this gas station, get picked up by the police, find my parents. Luckily for me, I paid attention to where everything was. He was arrested, he's still in prison to this day, and I got grounded for 3 months. Story time, my best friend slept with my boyfriend on my birthday. So a little background information. I was 16 and a sophomore in high school. Well, I had this best friend who we're going to call Sarah. Her and I became super close over the summertime, but she was like on and off best friends with this other girl who we're gonna call Mackenzie. But I had this boyfriend who I was also really on and off with. And Sarah knew about all the problems within our relationship. Well, I guess I underestimated how close Sarah and Mackenzie were because everything that I told Sarah, she went back and she told Mackenzie. And not to mention, Mackenzie was really close with my boyfriend. So of course she told my boyfriend everything that I was saying. This ended up causing a huge fight between my boyfriend and I. Well, the night before my birthday, my boyfriend and I were going back and forth arguing. And around 12 a.m. on my birthday, I forced myself to fall asleep. And at around 1 a.m., I woke up to 20 Snapchat notifications, all from my boyfriend. And when I opened them, I saw the worst thing ever. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my best friend slept with my boyfriend on my birthday. So like I said, I woke up at around 1 a.m. to 20 Snapchat notifications from my boyfriend. And I saw the absolute worst thing ever. The first 5 notifications were just him calling me names. And then all the other ones were just him doing stuff with my best friend. And you guys can already guess what I mean by doing stuff. So at this point, I was heartbroken, I was pissed off, but of course, because I gotta have the receipts, I went and took a video off my sister's phone of everything that he sent me. In the morning, I woke up to a text from an unknown number, and it turned out to be my boyfriend's best friend saying that him and Sarah were now together. So my boyfriend asked me to meet up and apologize. So I met him at this park, and he apologized to me, telling me that he wanted to get back together with me. But I told him to KMA, and I left. Then Sarah came to my house and keyed my car, and then we fought on my front lawn. And then after that, she was texting me about how she was coming back to my house, like for part 3. Part 3 about how my best friend slept with my boyfriend. So like I said, she came to my house and she keyed my car, and I caught her, so I went outside. We fought on my front lawn. After she left, she kept sending me messages saying that she was coming back to my house so we could fight again, but she was blocked, so I didn't get any of the messages. And then my ex came to my house and brought me flowers. And this was all in a span of 1 day. So because it was my birthday party, my cousins were at my house, and I already told them everything that happened. So they went outside and they fought him. Well, then I ended up sending all the videos to his parents, her parents, his siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins who loved me. Then I also decided to take legal action, and I sent the cops all of the screenshots of Sarah harassing me. And my sister got a video of us fighting, so I sent that to them too. Well, since she was 18 and I literally just turned 16, she got 3 months in county jail for minor harassment and minor physical altercations. So in the end, I think I won. Story time about the toxic boy that I almost started dating. So a little background information. Him and I both met on a set of a movie that we were in. Well, a few days into filming, he asked me out. So of course I said yes. And it was literally the most amazing first date ever. So he asked for a second date, and I said yes, of course. And the second date was terrible. He literally just tried to get in my pants the whole time. So then he asked me for a third date. And for some reason I said yes, hoping that it was not anything like the second date. And he didn't show up. So I pretty much got stood up. And then he even blocked my number. So a few months go by and I end up moving in with my best friend, about an hour away from where I was living when I met him. Well, the one night she came home and told me that he had messaged her on Instagram, which I thought was funny as hell because my best friend did not swing that way. So she pretends to flirt with him and asks him to come over. So he drives an hour to our apartment, and when he walks in, he just sees me standing in the kitchen. He immediately walked out.